So continuing from the first video, we're finding trig values of special angles in the unit circle. So let's keep going here. Let's try some radian ones. And so let's do, let's say the cosine of 7 pi over 6. So if we want to find the cosine of 7 pi over 6, we want to locate 7 pi over 6. And if you remember, 6 pi over 6 gets you here. If you count by pi over 6's, you get 7 pi over 6 is right there. So that's 7 pi over 6. And so the cosine, remember the cosine is the x-coordinate, because when you look at this right triangle here, cosine of the angle is the adjacent leg, so that's always the x. So the cosine is always the x-coordinate. And the x-coordinate, we have the longer leg of the 30, 60, 90, and the longer leg is the radical 3 over 2. But when we go to the left, the radical 3 over 2 is negative because we're going to the left. When you look at the coordinates of the point that corresponds to the angle 7 pi over 6, we go left, radical 3 over 2, and we go down 1/2. The cosine of any angle on the unit circle is always the x-coordinate of that point that corresponds to the angle. So the x-coordinate is negative radical 3 over 2. And then let's do, let's find the cosine of, sorry, I'm doing different colors here. Cosine of, let's say, negative pi over 4. Okay, so we haven't done one of those yet, so this could be a little tricky. But if you know how to count around the unit circle, and when you go in the counterclockwise direction, the pi over 4 angle measure is right there. Therefore, the negative pi over 4 angle measure would be right there. So that's negative pi over 4. And all we have to do is find the x-coordinate of that point. The x-coordinate of that point is, remember this is a 45, 45, 90, so the x-coordinate of the point is going to be radical 2 over 2. That's the x-coordinate of the point. If we wanted to find the sine of negative pi over 4, then we'd find the y-coordinate of that point. Now what's the y-coordinate? You go to the right, radical 2 over 2, and you go down radical 2 over 2. So it would be negative radical 2 over 2. Something to point out as well, that if we want to find the tangent of, let's say, pi over 4, that's when the sine and cosine have the same value. So, so we have opposite over adjacent, and that's the radical 2 over 2 over radical 2 over 2, and so that would be 1. So I know it's a lot. It's a lot to process, and so you're going to get most of your understanding, and you're going to be starting to see patterns when you start trying to find these values on your own. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put 3 problems up here, and I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure out these values, the trig values of the special angles. And we're going to do 1 sine, 1 cosine, and 1 tangent. So let's do the sine of 5 pi over 3. We'll do the cosine of 5 pi over 6. And let's do the tangent of 3 pi over 4. Okay, again, pause the video. And I'm going to go ahead and do these. 5 pi over 3 is right here. The sine is the y-coordinate. That's the longer leg. And we're going down. Longer leg down means negative radical 3 over 2. Cosine of 5 pi over 6, identify that's 5 pi over 6 right there. The cosine is the longer leg of the 30, 60, 90, and we're going left. Longer leg left, negative radical 3 over 2. Tangent of 3 pi over 4, that's where the sine and cosine have the same value, but they differ by a minus sign. So negative radical 2 over 2, positive radical 2 over 2. So we have one of those divided by the other, we're going to get negative 1. Shall we try that again? Let's do that. I'll try one more set of 3 problems here. Let's do the sine of pi, the cosine of pi, and let's say the tangent of, let's do pi over 6. Tangent of pi over 6. Okay, again, go ahead and pause the video. And I will show you my reasoning on getting these. Sine of pi is right over there. The sine is always the y-coordinate. The y-coordinate is 0. Cosine of pi is always the x. Cosine of the value is always the x-coordinate. And the point right there that corresponds to the angle pi has the ordered pair -1, 0. So -1 is the cosine, 0 is the sine. Now the tangent of pi over 6, I'm going to show you a little trick with the tangent too after this. Tangent of pi over 6 would be the opposite. The opposite is the shorter leg. That's the opposite divided by the longer leg, radical 3 over 2. And we have 1/2 times 2 over radical 3. So the 2's cancel and we get 1 over radical 3. Oops. And after we get 1 over radical 3, we're going to multiply top and bottom by radical 3. So we get radical 3 over 3. And that's it.